Okay, lads, we are going to start here this lesson um, in the context of an infection. Okay, remember what we covered in the previous lessons about how different microbes enter the body. There's such a thing called an inflammatory response. So picture this: you're working inside in the kitchen and you're working with a knife and you cut your hand. A wound has been created. Your body now has been infected with all of the different microbes that live in the air around you. They've entered your blood. We know through the inflammatory response, this is the general defense system, that histamine is released. So histamine is a chemical that will dilate the blood vessels. It'll allow the blood to rush to the site of infection quickly, which will then allow white blood cells to reach the site of infection quickly as well. Um, the general defense system will work in that it will clot the blood, it will create I suppose, a scab, but we now know there is definitely going to be infection at this point of the wound. So along comes the white blood cells, which we call monocytes, and they try to engulf the I suppose the different microbes that have entered. But a lot of the time they will work and they will kill most if not all of the microbes, but sometimes they won't be able to kill enough of this virus or enough of this bacteria or enough of this fungus that has entered the body. So what we need is a backup. We need something that is I suppose heavy power that can kill these microbes, and this is where the lymphocytes come into play. Lymphocytes, you'll know from yesterday, are also another type of white blood cell. So there's two types of white blood cell you must concern yourself with. The monocytes, which are the ones that engulf bacteria, like the one down there at the bottom left. And the lymphocytes are the ones that produce the antibodies. So the lymphocytes are also rushing to the site of this infection. And when they reach the site of infection, they start releasing out these antibodies as quickly as possible. These antibodies are going to be randomly released until such time as we find an antibody that will connect to the antigen of the bacteria. So these antigens are proteins found on the surface of the bacteria, and they connect onto the antigen. And if they connect, well, if we get a match, then this is what we need. We need to find the match so that it can disable the bacteria. So, in relation here to the to this, we compare this to enzymes and substrates. Enzymes must have a near perfect match to join to a substrate, in the same way as an antibody must have a near perfect match to fit a antigen. And if we find the correct antibody, what will happen next is maybe one of two things. First of all, the antibodies may deactivate the bacteria, and the bacteria might be caused to burst, okay, by lysis. And the second thing that might happen is that because the antibody has connected onto the antigen of the bacteria, this highlights or flags that this is a foreign body, it is a pathogen. So the monocytes will come along now and recognize that they must eat it and kill it. It must be killed in the immune system because it's a danger. Okay, so that's basically what we were talking about when we talk about infection in the body. But what if, I suppose, the virus or the bacteria, the fungus, has now got into our blood and has traveled around the rest of our body? Well, this is what we'll be hoping to look at now, I suppose, in the rest of the chapter, in terms of how do we develop immunity to these kind of dangerous pathogens. Okay, so today really our focus will be on, well, there's a number of different aspects we'll be looking at. We'll be looking at, I suppose, the idea of immunity, but really then we're going to try and focus on the different types of white blood cells that we will be involved in this immunity. And then in the next lesson, then we'll be studying various forms of immunity, whether it's natural or artificial, and that'll be the focus. So what we must recognize is that our immune system is something that runs throughout our body. Okay, we're talking about an immune system here, and in terms of a specific defense system that relies completely on lymphocytes. Lymphocytes are white blood cells, remember, and they are found. I suppose they are made in the bone marrow. Um, there are two different types of lymphocytes that we'll be studying today, and they are the B lymphocytes and the T lymphocytes. Okay, and we'll come back to those. So, in relation then to infection in the body, okay, well, infection in the body, we know, in order to defeat many viruses and bacteria out there, we require lymphocytes to produce antibodies in large numbers to try to, I suppose, attach to the antigen of bacteria. Okay, sometimes, most of the time, the body can naturally, if you're exposed to, say, a virus or a bacteria, your body will learn how to defend against that virus or bacteria. But sometimes we have to deal with very deadly diseases caused by bacteria or viruses, and we have to artificially, I suppose, increase immunity. And to do that, what we do is you might recognize here, the answer for this question here is vaccination. Okay, we vaccinate people. And just to kind of, I suppose, raise awareness to this before I do any more here on lymphocytes, it's important to recognize that there's a global problem here with viruses in general and many other infectious diseases. Because the danger of not vaccinating everyone might mean that there might be a resurgence of these viruses in the future. Okay, even before coronaviruses, we were starting to see measles and mumps outbreaks, and often what causes this here is where people have not received the vaccination for measles, mumps, and rubella, and they cause it to spread in their community. So the idea here of having, we'll say, um, vaccination is that we all vaccinate, because if we all vaccinate, the aim really would be to make the virus extinct. Okay, the virus can no longer reproduce or no longer replicate, no longer transmit between different people, and eventually just becomes extinct. So our focus, as I said, is on lymphocytes mostly for today, and we want to study the B lymphocytes and the T lymphocytes. We mentioned this briefly in the last lesson, and we said that B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes were, I suppose, they originate in the bone marrow. Okay, so the bone marrow here is a tissue between bones, and we know that there's two different types: the B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes. Now, structurally, they're just a little bit different, and also their functions are a little bit different. But the B lymphocytes, they're called B lymphocytes because they mature inside here in the bone marrow as well. Okay, so they're born and they are maturing here. So when we say maturing, we really mean that they spend maybe several weeks inside here in this bone marrow before they're ready to, I suppose, do the business of a B lymphocyte. The T lymphocytes, yes, they are, I suppose, born in the bone marrow, but they mature in the thymus gland, and the thymus gland here is, as we said in the last lesson, is up near the chest, top of the chest. So, what is a B lymphocyte? A B lymphocyte is basically, otherwise known as B cells. These are the lymphocytes that produce antibodies. Okay, that is their role. They are, what they do is they produce lots of different types of antibodies. They release into the environment until they find a match. Let's say, for argument's sake, they find a match now to the antigen. This B lymphocyte will reproduce. So it'll undergo a form of asexual reproduction. It'll undergo, I suppose, quite similar to a bacteria in that you have a mother cell which will create daughter cells, and these B lymphocytes with the correct antibody will multiply to huge numbers until such time as there's enough of them to kill whatever infection has occurred. So the B lymphocyte produces the antibodies that attacks the bacteria once we have found a perfect match. If you think about antibodies, really what they are is basically weapons. They're biological weapons to attack bacteria or viruses. So the B lymphocytes, that's their role. They produce antibodies. There is one other type of B lymphocyte that I do want you to bring to your attention, though, and that is called a memory cell. So the reason that we have immunity over long periods of time is because we have special types of white blood cells, which are called B memory cells, or B lymphocyte memory cells. And what they do is they will remain in our immune system for long periods of time. These B memory cells might live in very small numbers in our bodies. Okay, they're the specific white blood cells with the correct antibody for the correct disease. So let's say, for argument's sake, if you've ever experienced chickenpox, well, you can be sure that you have a B lymphocyte inside in your body, a B memory cell rather, which which has the correct antibody to kill the chickenpox virus. Okay, so these will remain, as I said, in our body, and they provide a memory of an infection, so that if you are infected again, then you will be able to defeat that disease very quickly. So the idea is if you are exposed at a young age to a virus, that you have a better chance of being able to kill it easily at a later stage. Our next focus then is on T lymphocytes. Okay, so far what have we covered? We've covered the B lymphocytes. We said that they are mostly involved in producing antibodies. There are a specific type called memory cells which remain inside our immune system, which remember the correct antibody to kill a bacteria or a virus. The T lymphocytes then have very specific roles, okay? And we don't need to know much about them, but we do need to, I suppose, have a few facts about them. So the first thing anyway is I've updated the notes a little bit on this just to make it a little bit easier to understand. But what we have is or we call them helper T cells, okay? Or helper T cells are a special type of cells which are found in the immune system, and they do the following. When they are there to, I suppose, recognize infection. So they have an ability to recognize, we'll say, cells that are infected with viruses, or also bacterial cells. So first job they do is they recognize an infection. The second thing that they do is they also, I suppose, once an infection is found, once they recognize an infection, what they will do then is they will send off alarm bells, and they will cause B lymphocytes to replicate quickly, to reproduce quickly. So it's basically the canary in the coal mine. They sound the alarm, and then the whole immune system is set off. So T helper cells are very important in, I suppose, setting off the immune system. The killer T cells are also, as the name suggests, very important. They kill cells that are infected with viruses, and they also kill bacterial cells. What they produce is something called perforin. Perforin is a chemical that perforates cells, and you might say, what does that mean? It basically means they blow holes in these cells and basically cause them to undergo lysis and burst. Killer T cells are very important in defending the body, so they literally obliterate, bacterial cells or cells that are infected by viruses with this perforin. We also then have what we call our suppressor T cells, and suppressor T cells, as the name suggests, they suppress. So they suppress your immune response. On average, you're talking about 2 weeks there, guys, for a flu infection or some sort of viral infection. Okay, and you probably feel like your energy levels change over that 2 weeks. The suppressor T cells are there to shut off or reduce your immune system when the infection has been defeated. Okay, so when the infection is either nearly gone or is totally gone, the suppressor T cells, they act, and they basically tell the immune system to slow down or stop. Okay, and that's obviously very important for defending your body. Right, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to ask you to watch this video. It's very interesting. It's about how your body defends itself against infection. Okay, there's an awful lot to this, really, to be honest, guys, the immune system, and we're only studying a very small amount of it. But this video will give you a greater idea about how the immune system works overall. So what I'm going to ask you to do I'm going to ask you to watch the video, and I'm going to ask you to answer these few questions based on the video, okay? And then we will address them then in the next lesson once you have them done.